What's going on, chat? Welcome back to the stream, a part of our essentially daily stream where we stream every single day during the week at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, I know we were initially doing our. Uh, whatever. All right. I know we were doing a little bit of a couple streams on Sundays as well, um, which I may get away from as we are officially in NFL territory, and I think most of you boys are probably going to be watching football games anyway. So at this point, I think we're going to stick to every single day during the week sort of schedule. For special events like this weekend, we do have UFC Paris. We will be doing a watch along for that, so we will be streaming on Saturdays. But I think from this point going forward, I'll post it on YouTube. I'll post it on my Twitter as well to keep you guys updated. But at this point, I think we're going to stick to just during the week live stream sort of schedule. At 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Normally, today I know we're streaming a little bit early at 7, but normally it'll be at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'll keep you updated if I ever do these earlier streams, which I did for the stream. But anyways, welcome to the stream, everybody. We had a couple things that came out since the last time we talked. I don't think this is official, but it seems like it's pretty close to happening potentially. We were talking about the lightweight division yesterday a lot, and the fact that we need some more potential movement at the weight class, and it seemed like we may have gotten our answer at least to some of the fights, with Arman Tsarukyan versus Dan Hooker potentially being the main event of UFC Qatar at the end of November 22nd to be exact. This fight itself is really good. I do think in terms of meaning, obviously there's a lot of meaning. Whoever wins this fight is most likely going to fight for a title in their next fight. Even if Dan Hooker beats Arman here, I think he gets a title shot in his next fight. And also, it gives us some clarity a little bit that Arman Tsarukyan honestly may not be the next guy that gets a title. But we'll see. Obviously, there's still a lot of potential moving parts here. But in terms of the fight itself, I think it's a really good one. It is good to see Arman Tsarukyan getting back in there for Dan Hooker. It is good to see him get back in there as well, especially after the hand injury that he had that held him out of the Justin Gaethje fight, and he hasn't fought since then. So overall, I think it's a good fight. It seemed like they were putting on a lot of really good fights for that UFC Qatar fight. And although I don't think this is official yet, if this is the main event for UFC Qatar, I think that card is just going to be another example of a lot of really good fight night cards and pay-per-view cards to close out the year. So UFC Qatar is looking really, really good. Now, outside of just that was the big news that came out today. But outside of that, we also have Paulo Costa versus Shara Bullet. We were kind of talking about this a little bit yesterday, but this fight is official for actually on the same card, UFC Qatar. It's going to be the co-main event for that card. A little bit of a interesting matchmaking, in my opinion, for Paulo Costa and Shara. I guess the UFC is trying to push Shara a little bit by giving him Paulo Costa here. A relatively big name, a guy in Paulo who is coming off a win, a guy in Paulo who is in the rankings. They're obviously trying to get Shara Bullet in the rankings, but at the end of the day, I do think Paulo Costa has a style here to beat Shara Bullet. I think early on what he can do is pressure Shara, get inside that kicking range, utilize his boxing, and at the end of the day, I do think Paulo Costa is going to be able to find a way to win this fight via decision. I don't think he'll find a finish. He doesn't hit nearly hard enough, and also we have seen Shara take humongous shots and, survive. So I think this is most likely going to be a Paulo Costa decision victory. But also another pretty good fight added to that UFC Qatar fight. So it seems like we got both the main as well as the co-main event set for UFC Qatar. And also we have some other fights that have already been announced for that card. Like Horiguchi is going to be making his UFC debut on that card as well. And just a lot of really good and really fun fights being added to that UFC Qatar card. But outside of that, of course, obviously it is fight week. I was kind of touching upon it a little bit before, but we will be doing our official UFC live stream, our watch along for UFC Paris on Saturday. It's going to be at noon Eastern time. And so be sure to join if you guys are interested in that. And in terms of the card itself, it looks like it's going to be very, very good. Of course, the main event is Caio Borralho versus Nasruddin Imavov. I already put a video out giving my in-depth breakdown on that fight specifically, but just to give you the cliff notes, I do think leg kicks alongside with leg kicks alongside with pressure, alongside with potential grappling is the reason why I'm slightly leaning towards Caio Borralho. But regardless, the fight should be good. It obviously has a lot of meaning in that fight. The winner of that fight is most likely going to get a title shot in their next one. And then the co-main event, actually, I personally think is even more interesting than the main event with BSD and Mauricio Rufy. For Rufy, he's been a legitimate contender, or I shouldn't say contender, but a legitimate prospect at this point that has been showing a lot of promise. And for BSD, he was once a guy that was seen to be a legitimate contender at the lightweight division. I know he had a couple losses to Dustin Poirier and Renato Moicano that kind of derailed his hype. But at this point, if he's able to get a victory over Mauricio Rufy, he puts himself right back on track. And if Rufy is able to knock out BSD, especially in the first round, that really catapults his stardom. And we'll see what kind of top matchups he gets ranked up against in his next fight, assuming he is able to get past BSD. But obviously, as I did post a video, if you guys haven't seen it, be sure to check it out. But I did post a video on Monday earlier this week on why I thought BSD was going to be able to beat Mauricio Rufy here. So definitely some really good fights in the main and co-main. The rest of the card is also looking pretty good with Bukauskas, Paul Craig. We have Patricio Pitbull and Queda on the card. That's definitely a fight that I'm marking personally. It should be a really good one. Queda looks to be really good. Of course, he hasn't fought in the UFC, and sometimes when guys move over to the UFC, they don't look great, at least initially. But for Queda, he's coming over from a different organization, not Bellator / PFL. He's coming over from Octagon. And honestly, a lot of times fighters that come over from Octagon look pretty good. I think they're a pretty good organization over there. I think they have some pretty good talent. And when you look at some of the highlights that Queda has, he appears to be a really nasty fighter. Very nasty body shots, very powerful, pretty good boxer. And I'm excited to see what he's able to do here against Patricio Pitbull. But on the prelims, we have William Gomes, Brenison Habera versus Omar Sy, Tybura versus Ante. We have Sam Patterson on the card versus Trey Waters. Brad Tavares is on the card. Gustafsson Fakhretdinov. That's probably going to be one of the more exciting fights on the night. Very underrated fight. Only the second fight of the night. So be sure to tune in early to this UFC Paris card. And overall, yeah, it's definitely a good card. There's the top end talent at the top of the card. You have some newcomers. You have some potential prospects on the prelims and the bottom half of the main card. So I think this UFC Paris card checks off a lot of boxes for a fight night. The crowd itself, of course, it's going to be in Paris, which is always really fun to watch. The crowds over there are usually really good, and they have two of their own, both in the main and the co-main event. So I think it's going to be a pretty fun night or a pretty fun day if you're in the US. And the card itself is good. Definitely no complaints with the UFC Paris card for sure. So I'm excited about it. And in terms of bets, I will be giving out my full in-depth bets, picks for every single fight, as well as best bets that I like for this specific card for members. So if you guys are interested in that, be sure to hit that join button, become a member. But of course, no obligation to do that. But yeah, without further ado, one thing that I also did want to get into was a tier list. So we used to do tier lists on these live streams quite a bit. We took a little bit of a break from it due to the fact they were just talking about other stuff, due to the fact they were doing watch alongs. But I think it's a perfect time to do a little bit of a tier list here. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So this tier list is going to be for best crowds. I know we're going over to Paris this weekend, and I was talking about it a lot on the streams on how good I thought the Paris crowds were. So somebody mentioned this in chat a few days ago, and I think it's a good idea. So let's do it. For UFC Brazil, I think this is an interesting one because for Brazil in the past, they were a great crowd. But when you look at some recent examples of the UFC going over to to Brazil, it hasn't been amazing. If you look specifically at the card they had with Glover Teixeira and Jamal Hill, I thought that was a really bad showing from the crowd, as the crowd just didn't really seem into the fights that much in general. And after it became clear that Glover Teixeira was losing in that fight, which turned out to be his retirement fight, a lot of the fans ended up leaving early. So in my opinion, because of that, I probably put Brazil in C tier. The only reason they're not in D tier, in my opinion, is because, earlier Brazil crowds have been really good. John, what's going on, brother? Welcome to the stream. So yeah, I think I would have Brazil in C tier. Now for Abu Dhabi, usually when they go over to Abu Dhabi, the cards themselves are great. In terms of the crowds, they don't really stand out to me. They're not bad. They're not good. Or I should say great. They're not bad. They're not great. They're kind of just middle of the road to me. And obviously, as I said, the cards are usually really good over there. So I'd probably put Abu Dhabi in B tier, in my opinion. Next, we have Australia. in my opinion, Australia is S tier. When you look back at a lot of the cards, but specifically the card with Volkanovski and Islam Makhachev, I get the fight itself is huge, but the fact that the crowd was so great all night, not just for the main event, and in the main event itself, the crowd was amazing as well. I just think Australia in general usually has really, really good crowds. We are going over to Perth in a couple weeks at the end of this month for a fight night card, which I think will be really good as well. The crowd will be really good as well. So whenever the UFC goes over to Australia for fight nights or for pay-per-views, they're always really good. So in my opinion, I have Australia as an S tier. Now, for Canada, I think Canada is pretty good. I'd probably put them in A tier, low half of A tier, or maybe high half of B tier. For Canada, they definitely had some amazing showings in the past with GSP. I mean, the crowd, when GSP made his return there was incredible. But some of their performances or some of the events recently have also had some pretty good crowds as well. I don't think it's as good as Australia or maybe some other cities or countries on this list. But in my opinion, I probably put Canada as a B tier, but in the higher half of B tier or the lower half of A tier. But that's how I have it there. Miami, I think Miami is definitely squarely in A tier. For the most part, Miami is a really good crowd. Also, it does need to be said that when the UFC does go over to Miami, it's usually for really good cards. That definitely helps out. But regardless, the crowds over there are usually really good. They get very hyped and excited for big fights, for huge knockouts, submissions, just fights in general. So I personally consider Miami to be in A tier. New York, I'm definitely biased in this one, but for New York, I'd probably put him in A tier at the top half or the lower half of S tier. Not just MMA or UFC, really just any sport, but especially in the UFC. I've actually had firsthand experience. Whenever the UFC goes over to New York, the crowds are amazing. When you look back at some of the recent fights they had there with Yuri and Alex Pereira, the crowd was insane for that. For Alex Pereira versus Adesanya, the crowd was insane for that. For Michael Chandler versus Dustin Poirier, that was probably the loudest I've ever heard a crowd ever. So the crowd was also insane for that. For Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler, the crowd was insane. There's been so many great fights at the Garden, which certainly help out. New York, of course. But on top of that, the crowd pop itself, the crowd excitement itself has always been amazing. So I'd probably have New York in S tier, low behind Australia, or maybe the front of A tier. That's probably how I would have them. Actually, I'm actually going to change it. I'll have them as the front of A tier. Next, we have Paris. Paris has to be an S tier, I think, ahead of New York, but probably a little bit behind Australia. There's been some amazing cards in Paris, and over the years, we definitely have seen really good crowds. When you watch Tai Tuivasa and Cyril Gane, the crowd reaction to that fight was just incredible. I know the fight itself is kind of funny looking back, Cyril Gane versus Tai Tuivasa, but regardless, that was a legitimate fight at the time. But the crowd itself was amazing. When you watch some of BSD's fights when he was fighting in Paris, the crowd was always amazing. Of course, we're going to get to see it this weekend. So I'm assuming the crowd is once again going to be amazing this weekend, but Paris never upsets. Then we have Texas. I would probably have Texas probably an A tier as well. Probably an A tier as well. There's definitely been a lot of places that the UFC has went in Texas that turn out to be really good crowds and really good pops. So I think Texas is really good. Definitely behind New York, definitely behind Miami, in my opinion, but definitely pretty good crowds over there in Texas. And obviously, the UFC has went to a couple different cities over there. Mikey, what's going on, brother? Pretty good, pretty good. Have you been? Have you been? We're just doing a tier list here for best crowds in the UFC. Then next we have the United Kingdom. I think they're also in S tier, probably slightly behind Paris, but pretty close. When the UFC, whenever they go to the UK, even though the last event turned out to be at like 5 a.m. or 3 a.m., whatever it was, didn't matter. The UK crowd was still great. When Paddy Pimblett goes back there, it's always an amazing atmosphere for his walkout, for his fights in general. And the UK definitely has great fans. And whenever the UFC goes there, it just bolsters the event to an extent. I talk about this all the time, but whenever the UFC goes to some of these arenas, a big reason for why it's so much more exciting is in part because of the crowd. And when they go to the Apex, when you don't have that crowd factor there, it just takes away from the fight. So when you look back at a lot of fights from Paris, Australia, or the UK, it's always, the fights feel bigger maybe than they otherwise would have been because of the crowd pops and because of the crowd reactions. Next, we have Las Vegas. Las Vegas definitely has to be an A tier. Las Vegas is the fight capital of the world. The UFC normally goes to Las Vegas for most of their cards, for their pay-per-view cards, and obviously the Apex is in Vegas as well. But I'd probably put them in A tier, behind New York, behind Miami, behind the UK, Paris, and Australia, but ahead of Texas. The crowd pops are definitely pretty good. Obviously, there's been a ton of fights in Las Vegas, so definitely no complaints or anything about it. But I'd probably have them in A tier behind some of those other cities. Now, Seattle is an interesting one. Seattle, I'm a little bit biased here because obviously I'm from New York, but Seattle, I think I would personally have in A tier ahead of Miami, Vegas, and Texas, but behind New York. Seattle was really good. The UFC doesn't go there that often, but the last event that they went there, the crowd was amazing. I thought the card itself was great as well. The Fight Night card not too long ago in Seattle, I think it was like all finishes besides the main event, or all finishes besides one or two fights. It was like a ridiculously good card, but the crowd pops were amazing there. I would like to see the UFC go to Seattle a little bit more, and based on the crowd pop and based on the reception from that card, I do think UFC is probably going to go there a little bit more. Next, we have LA. LA is definitely good. I'd probably have LA maybe here. Nothing stands out to me personally, so probably an A tier, but behind all the other cities and countries that I have ahead of them. For LA, they don't go there that often, but the new arena they have, the Clippers arena that they have. Over there, I think is a really cool arena. The crowd pops are definitely decent, but nothing that jumps out to me significantly. Next, we have Arizona. Arizona is actually really, really good. I would probably put Arizona ahead, maybe, of Miami, um, like this. There we go. Yeah, so I would probably put Arizona ahead of Miami. The couple times that Justin Gaethje went back to Arizona and fought Justin Gaethje versus Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier, the crowds have been amazing over there. So I definitely do think they're a really good city, probably a pretty underrated city for fans, for the UFC's perspective, and they definitely have been a lot of really good events in Arizona as well. So hopefully they'll go back there relatively soon. But there's definitely been a lot of great fights, a lot of great crowd pops, and yeah. So that's the tier list we have here for best UFC cities, and basically my criteria is what fans are the best in all these cities, I guess. Pretty straightforward. But yeah, this is the list I have. Let me know in chat if you guys agree, disagree. But yeah, it's been a while since we did a tier list, so I decided to hop on a tier list today. I thought it was a good opportunity to do so. And yeah, that's what we got, fellas. That's what we got. But yeah, anybody joining in late, just a couple of breaking news points that came out. Arman Tsarukyan versus Dan Hooker appears to be the main event of UFC Qatar, so that's going to be a really good one. Early prediction for that one, I would be leaning with Arman Tsarukyan. I think the wrestling could be huge for him, but if Dan can figure out a way to stop the wrestling and keep the fight on the feet, utilizing his front kick to the body, utilizing his footwork, utilizing his range and distance management, I do think he can, be a real problem from Arman Tsarukyan on the feet. But as I said, I think Arman is probably too good of a wrestler. I think he figures out a way to find multiple takedowns in this fight over Dan, and I think he finds a victory. I wouldn't even be surprised if he did it in a similar fashion to how, or to the amount of takedowns that Gamrot was able to get, maybe to even a higher level. But we shall see. What's going on, brother? Welcome to the stream. What's your source for Arman? Here it is. I don't know if this is official or not yet, but Red Corner MMA has been a pretty good source, and they're reporting this that it's Tsarukyan versus Dan Hooker next. So it's not reported everywhere, so I don't think this is official yet, but I did see this on Red Corner MMA. So that's the source for it. I'm kind of hoping that is the fight, just because there hasn't been a lot of movement at 155 lately, and I'm desperately waiting to see who's going to fight for against Ilia Topuria next, who's going to fight for the belt next. So it definitely should be a really good fight and a great addition to the card. Awesome fight, yeah. for sure. It should be really good. And for I think it should be probably a number one contenders fight. We'll see what the UFC decides to do. If they decide to give it to Gaethje right away, the title shot versus Ilya, or they decide to wait. But if Gaethje or Patty's not getting it, this should be a number one contenders fight. If Arman wins, obviously he would undoubtedly deserve a title shot versus Ilya. And if Dan Hooker beats Arman Tsarukyan, he would also undoubtedly deserve a title shot versus Ilya Topuria. As at that point, Dan Hooker would be on a 4-fight win streak, I believe, and beating a legitimate number one contender in Arman Tsarukyan. So whoever wins that fight definitely deserves a title. So really cool fight. Definitely is cool that is going to be a 5-round main event fight for UFC Qatar. And yeah, definitely excited about it. And yeah, as I said, that UFC Qatar fight in general is looking really good. With Horiguchi making his UFC debut on the card. Before we were talking about Paulo Costa versus Shara Bullet being on the card. So there's definitely a lot of good fights. A lot of good fights on that card, and it's honestly a common trend. Usually in the fall, the UFC puts on a lot of really good cards, and obviously, we have Paris coming up this week, and we have some other really good cards coming up in terms of pay-per-views and in terms of fight nights. And this UFC Qatar card is just another example of a really good card. The UFC has honestly done a pretty good job as of late. So exciting stuff, boys. Definitely exciting stuff. But but yeah, if I had to say a card that I'm personally um Okay, here we got some other news actually. Just as I was scrolling through Twitter, all signs indicate that Topuria won't fight again until the spring. I don't know if that's true or not, but if that is true, that sucks. um, wow, that's crazy. Until the spring, that's got to be fake. Um, that's insane. If that's true, that's insane. I hope that's not true. Um, but anyways, if I had to pick a card that I'm personally most excited about, um, coming up, I would probably have to say that the New York card. I know there's only 3 fights announced so far: JDM, Islam, Shevchenko versus Wei Li, and Leon versus Carlos Prates. But all three of those fights are great. JDM versus Islam is honestly a very, very high level fight and a really exciting fight. So that's definitely something that I'm interested in. But yeah, I just took a double take. I don't know if this is true or not, but this is from Magic MMA Bets, who's been very reliable, and he just tweeted out that all signs indicate that Ilya Topuria won't fight again until the spring. Until the spring? That's insane. Is he injured or something? Um, I don't. I hope that's not true, to be honest. But if that is true, we got some time, I guess. He'll probably have an interim title fight, or maybe he'll vacate if that is true. I don't know. That's true. That sucks. Pretty inactive. But but yeah, that New York card looks really good for show. But what do you boys think? What's upcoming card that you guys are most excited about? Is it one of the pay-per-views coming up? One of the fight nights coming up? Obviously, usually pay-per-views are better cards, but there's definitely a lot of examples of really good fight night cards coming up, and this weekend is honestly a good example of that, with Kaio Imavov, BSD Rufi, as well as some fighters making their UFC debuts this upcoming weekend. So should be pretty good. Kamaru Usman says he wants to face the winner of Islam JDM. I think for Usman, he's probably got to wait a little bit, or not wait a little bit, but I think he's got to fight one more time. Is what I meant to say. I think a fight between Kamaru Usman and Bilal Muhammad makes all the sense in the world. Bilal's coming off a loss. Usman's coming off a win. They have their beef. They're both former champions. I think a fight between them two makes a lot of sense. So that's what I would personally like to see next: Kamaru versus Bilal Muhammad. And if Kamaru beats Bilal, then he'll get a title shot. If Bilal beats Kamaru, he'll be close to a title shot. But we'll see who's the champion at that point. But yeah, I would personally like to see him, fight again. Let's see what else we got here, fellas. Uh, oh man, Yeah, I'm just watching back the Imavov stoppage against Cannonier. That was a terrible stoppage, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, we'll see how he does this weekend. Man, I almost feel bad for Cannonier because he's a really really good fighter, but he's just a little bit older at this point. He kind of got into his prime a little bit older, and at this point, it's just very difficult. That would just be very difficult for him to get back to a title shot at this point. His one title shot that he did have didn't turn out well at all against Adesanya, but I still think he's a really good fighter, and yeah, he's coming off a loss, unfortunately, against MVP in a fight that I thought he probably would have won, um, but yeah, Cannonier is kind of like just the litmus test for a lot of these young guys coming up. For Kaio, for Imavov, and I think for others examples as well. Of if you're going to be a good fighter in the UFC, you have to be Jared Cannonier. If you're going to be a legitimate contender in the UFC, I should say, you have to be Jared Cannonier in the middleweight division. It kind of just feels like that sort of fighter at this point. But yeah. What's going on, brother? Welcome to the stream. Has Arman Hooker been announced? Yeah, I think. Well, I don't think it's official yet, but it's been reported by Red Corner MMA, which is a pretty good source. And yeah, so they're reporting that Arman versus Hooker is going to be the main event of UFC Qatar at the end of November. So I don't know if it's official or not yet, but that's what they're reporting, and I hope it's true. I mean, I think that fight would be really, really good, and definitely a fight that should be a number one contender fight. Um, but yeah, and also I don't know if you guys were here before, but as I said, also another pretty reliable source, Magic MMA Bets, is reporting that all signs indicate that Ilia Topuria won't fight again until the spring, and I hope that's not true. But if that is true, it's going to be a while. There's probably going to be an interim title fight at lightweight, unless Ilya just absolutely vacates the belt. I don't know, but yeah, that's bad news if that is true. But I don't know if it is. I hope it's official. I want to watch Arman. Yeah. Arman hasn't fought in forever. Obviously, he was supposed to get a title shot against Islam. He had to pull out for injury or for weight cut, whatever it was. But since then, he hasn't fought at all. So yeah, I agree. I would like to see Arman get back in there and get another fight under his belt. And if he wins his next fight, he definitely will be getting a title shot, I believe. If it's for an interim belt or it's for the official belt against Ilya, we shall see. But I've said this a lot. I would really like to see Arman Tsarukyan versus Ilia Topuria. I think that's the fight the UFC should make. But I guess now there's some uncertainty about about Ilya. What do you make? People saying, yeah, I think it's just like their build, their frame, I guess is kind of similar. They're both just muscular guys plus, but that's probably why they say it. In terms of like their face, yeah, I don't really see it that much either. Maybe like very slightly, I guess. I don't know, but yeah, I don't really see it that much either, to be honest. Um, but yeah, have them fight together, each other. Why not? But we'll see. We shall see. I'm really excited about that fight, though. I think Kaio is honestly a little bit underrated. I know a lot of people are picking Imavov here, so I think he's slightly underrated, maybe. But we'll see what happens in this fight. Did man not fight? I don't know what his team is. Yeah. So yeah, I was just talking about that before. This is a pretty reliable source, but Magic MMA Bets is actually even going further than that. He's actually saying that. Yeah, I'll pull up the tweet here. He's actually going further than that. He's saying all signs indicate that Topuria is not going to fight again until the spring. And he's actually, I've been following him for a while. He's actually a very reliable source. So I hope this is not true, but yeah, it's actually even going further than just the end of the year. It's crazy if that is true, but I hope it's not. I need to know. Yeah, nobody's talking about. He looks kind of like Kaio. No, I don't know him actually. I got to get into BJJ a little bit more. Yeah, I know. Well, actually, I don't know. Has the UFC BJJ had any events? Well, I believe they had at least one. Has there been more events that they've put on? I would like to watch some of those events. Never really watched a BJJ tournament live. I've seen highlights, but never watched it live. Could be cool. I think it's true because Ilya has good money. He's not aggressive before. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair, I guess. Um, I guess I could see that. But I would really like to see him fight. I mean, obviously, he's a very exciting fighter. He's one of my favorite fighters to watch for sure with his boxing ability, just finishing everybody. So I hope that's not true. I hope he does fight sooner than that. But if that's what it is, that's what it is, I guess. Then probably Arman Tsarukyan, if he beats Dan Hooker, he'll probably fight for the interim belt. Or maybe they just do an interim belt with Arman and Dan Hooker. I don't know. Well, it's not a fight night, so probably not. But um, we'll see. I don't know. We'll see what the UFC decides to do if he actually is waiting out that long. Um, yeah. I think they have done 2 UFC division. Okay. All right. Yeah. I'll definitely. I guess I'll keep track when the third one's coming up, and I'll definitely tune in. But yeah, definitely some of them could be pretty cool. What's going on, brother? Welcome back to the stream. It's been a little bit. Welcome back. Welcome back. Just talking about Arman Tsarukyan potentially fighting Dan Hooker, and also uh, we might be um, we might be without Ilya Taporia for quite a while, apparently. Um, I wish they'd go UFC BG on Saturdays. That would make sense. That would make sense. Yeah. Um, but they do it on Thursdays. Yeah, I don't know. I guess what they're trying to do is they're trying to have like everything match up because Thursdays. So let's say they'll probably try to package this together. I'm sure Thursdays will be UFC BJJ. Fridays um will be what's it called, a power slap. Nobody watches that, but that's how they're going to package it. So Thursday BJJ, Friday power slap, Saturday UFC, Sunday WWE. I think Sundays is WWE. So I'm sure that's why they did it because they want to package it like that. But we'll see. Is Hooker Armor next or something? Yeah, it's been reported in a couple places, or not a couple places, from Red Corner MMA, which is a pretty good source. That Armin Sarukian versus Dan Hooker are the main event of UFC Qatar in November. So it makes sense. I would say that fight would make sense, and I think they're gonna do it. Um, I think JDM will beat Islam. I think so as well. I think JDM is going to beat Islam as well. I think it's a really close fight. I know a lot of people are counting out JDM, but I think because of his size, I think because of his boxing ability, I also think because of the way that he fights, he kind of has a decent style to stop takedowns. With his high guard, he kind of utilizes it in a different way, where he's able to stop takedowns with his high guard and seamlessly transition to striking to takedown defense, which has been a complaint that I've personally had for a lot of strikers. They're not able to make that seamless transition. It's either they're striking or they're trying to stop takedowns. But for JDM, it's very seamless. So actually, I think his style is pretty well suited for a grappler. So yeah, I'm personally leaning with JDM as well in the fight. And if JDM does beat Islam, yeah, it definitely would make it harder for us to see Islam versus Ilya. But who knows? Never say never. If JDM does beat Islam, there is. I don't think this is super likely, but there is a possibility that Islam decides to move back down to 155, and then we can get Ilya Islam there. But I don't think that's super likely. I don't think Islam's ever moving down again. Um, but we'll see. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah, I think that's probably their thinking. Because they've done it before with Power Slap UFC and WWE packaging it all together. So yeah, I guess the BJJ is just going to be on Thursday, so they have a extended weekend. Armor is going to descend to Hooker, legit with one side and mauling. Yeah, I definitely would favor Armin in that fight as well. Dan Hooker has been running hot for sure, but I would certainly lean with the elite wrestling of Armin Sarukian in that one for sure. But we'll see. I'm assuming it's going to happen, but it's only been reported from one source, so we'll see what happens. Yeah. To the JDM thing, I think you're talking about. But yeah, I would personally like to see the fight though. Why not? Why not? There hasn't been too much movement at the lightweight division, so whenever there's legitimate top contenders fighting each other, it's always a good thing. Um, I think he beats him upstanding. Maybe I'm not that high in Armin's stand up personally. I mean, he's very athletic, he's very fast, He has pretty good kicks, I would say, but the problem with Arman Tsarukyan, a big reason why I think Topuria beats him, is he's a bit chinny. Not saying Dan Hooker hits the hardest, he doesn't, but he is a bit chinny. So I think mostly what he's going to try to do here is try to grapple. On the feet, I think it could be close, I guess, but in my opinion, I think I slightly lean with Dan Hooker on the feet. But in the fight itself, obviously it's MMA. I think Armin's going to find takedowns, find a lot of takedowns, and I think he's going to figure out a way to get the victory. Um, Probably by decision. Maybe he finds a submission, but probably decision if I had to say. Early prediction. Um, but yeah, we shall see. We shall see. Definitely exciting fight though, and that card is looking fire. Early contender for one of the, on paper at least, one of the fight night cards of the year. That UFC Qatar card. It looks to be really good, and obviously it's not even close to being done. We just had a handful of fights announced. Arman Tsarukyan and Dan Hooker is the main event. The co-main event is going to be Paulo Costa Shara Bullet. That one is official. Shara Bullet and Paulo. Kind of weird matchmaking, in my opinion. I don't think Shara is good, so I don't know why they're trying to push him, but I guess for that market, maybe that's the reason. And then we also have Horiguchi on the card. So I believe only 3 fights were announced so far for UFC Qatar, but the 3 fights that were announced are really good. And I'm assuming they're going to announce some other really good fights as well. So I'm excited about it. If I were Hooker retard, his opponent is very strong. He will just lose. You're saying before he fights Arman? Yeah, that'd be kind of crazy. But yeah, I mean, listen, Dan has been running hot. Does he beat Arman? No, I don't think so. But you know, who knows? He's been running hot. He's beaten some guys that I thought he would lose to. So who knows? We shall see. But yeah, I definitely heavily lean with Arman Tsarukyan in that fight. Um, but yeah, what do you guys think will happen? By the way, so if Ilya is legitimately out that long until the spring, they're going to have to do an interim title. So assuming Arman beats Hooker, who would be in the interim title fight? Arman versus who? Versus Max Holloway? Does Holloway slide in there? Do they throw Paddy Pimblett in there? Do they throw Justin Gaethje in there? If that does turn out to be the case, I don't know. Definitely some questions for show. Arman has been training with Hamza for a long time. I can't wait for that match. Yeah. He has been training. I mean, he was already a great grappler, a great wrestler, specifically even before training with Hamzat, but especially at this point, it's probably only going to take his game to the next level. Yeah, I'm sure Arman's grappling is going to look very, very good as it normally does, but I think it's going to look really good in this one versus Dan Hooker, and we'll see how dominant he's able to look out there. But we'll see. I mean, Dan Hooker has definitely surprised me before, so we'll see. But I am leaning with Arman. What else we got here, chat? Yeah, we got Sam Patterson. Sam Patterson's fighting this weekend on the Paris card. He's actually someone that impressed me over the years. Initially, once he came over to the UFC, I didn't think that much of him. I thought he was a little bit chinny, or a lot of bit chinny. And yeah, his grappling was good, but I didn't think his striking was all that great, and he was just a little chinny. But as of late, he's looked pretty good. His striking looks a little bit better in his last fight versus Danny Barlow. His grappling has looked really good in most of his fights, honestly. So Sam Patterson is definitely somebody that I'm looking out for on this card. He's fighting on the prelims versus Trey Waters. So I'll be interested in that fight for sure, see how he looks and see what sort of improvements he's made from his last fight against Barlow, in a fight that he honestly looked pretty good in. So we shall see. By the way, I think for the main event, I think it's going to be a good fight overall, but I do think there's a very high possibility that it's a very low output. When you look at both of the guys in the main event, they're both notoriously known to be low output guys, Imavov especially, but also Caio Borralho. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a chess match in the fight. I think a lot of leg kicks from Caio Bahaio, maybe some pressure from Caio as well. And I think he would be benefited by higher output, but he doesn't normally fight like that. And I also think he'll be benefited by grappling. And we'll see if he decides to grapple in this fight. But I do think it could be a little bit of a chess match in this one. We'll see. Also, I don't know if you boys saw this. We were kind of talking about this on stream a little bit ago, but kind of just confirming it. Back a few months ago when Alex Pereira tweeted on his Twitter account or his X account, whatever, that he was unhappy with the UFC, and then right after that, he said that he was hacked. He just said recently on Ariel Hawani that he actually wasn't hacked. He was just had a miscommunication with the UFC. But yeah, we kind of assumed that he wasn't hacked. Probably what happened, if I had to guess, is most likely the UFC was going to give the title shot to Yuri Prochazka instead of Alex Pereira for his immediate rematch. Alex was very upset about that, but after Yuri declined, that title fight against what's his face, Magomed Ankalaev, then I think Alex Pereira was like, all right, whatever. But I think he felt a little betrayed because the UFC wasn't giving him an immediate title shot or immediate rematch. If I had to guess, I don't know if that's the truth, but if I had to guess, I'd probably say that's what happened there. So yeah. By the way, I also saw a lot of people talking about Aaron Pico and saying that, oh, he was fraud checked or whatever. I was just watching a video earlier today about someone going off saying Aaron Pico was fraud checked. He shouldn't have been in this position in the first place. And I don't know, maybe there is some credence that he shouldn't have gotten a number one contenders fight in his first fight in the UFC. There probably is credence to that. It's not like Aaron Pico was this ridiculously undefeated, successful guy coming over to the UFC. But saying that Aaron Pico is a bust or he's a fraud or whatever, I think is a little bit premature and probably just inaccurate. Aaron Pico was going up against a really good fighter in Lerone Murphy, who's at that point was on a really long win streak, and obviously he continued his win streak after the fight. But it's not like Pico was having no success in that fight and he looked like he didn't belong in there. He was actually winning the fight until he wasn't. Now, unfortunately for Aaron Pico, that's kind of how his career has gone now in the UFC, but also especially in Bellator/PFL. It's either he knocks out his opponents and has a lot of success, or he gets knocked out. And usually when he gets knocked out bad. So it was kind of just another one of those examples in that fight versus Lerone Murphy. But it's unfortunate, but that's kind of how Aaron Pico's career has gone. But I think Aaron Pico is going to be good with a couple changes. I think he'll be good. Maybe staying a little bit more defensively sound. Maybe not throwing himself into the fire as much as he does in a lot of his fights could benefit him a lot. But I still think he's good, and I think he'll beat a lot of guys. And honestly, maybe he could have beat Lerone Murphy on a different night. Who knows? What do you think about Charles Oliveira not wrestling properly for me? The same thing. Yeah, it's definitely not smart. It's definitely not smart. I mean, Charles was knocked out pretty badly not too long ago against Ilya. So you would like to see a guy like that take some more rest, but the reasoning behind why he's doing this is because they're going back to Brazil. Charles wants to fight in Brazil really badly, so he decided just to, make a quick turnaround here. But so I don't think it's smart. I don't love the idea, but one thing that I will say specifically about the opponent, specifically about the fight, is I don't really think that Rafael Fiziev is super dangerous. Like with his kicks, if he lands clean, spinning wheel kick or a head kick of some sort on you, yeah, he'll probably knock you out. But with his punching power, I always felt like Fiziev was kind of a big 145er and, just too small for 155. And I think we've seen that in a lot of his fights. So listen, Charles does get hit a lot and something to worry about, especially making this quick turnaround. But I don't know if Fiziev is the type of fighter that's going to make him, pay and is really going to knock him out, at least with his hands. And I think the majority of this fight is probably going to be held in the clinch or in close, which is also another area where Fiziev struggles and where Charles excels. So I don't love that Charles is making this quick turnaround, especially after getting knocked out badly. But I think for the opponent that he has, I think it's a pretty good one stylistically. I think Fiziev's a good fighter. He's really fast, great kicks, pretty defensively sound, at least at range. A very fast twitch kind of guy, definitely dangerous from that perspective. But stylistically, I think it's probably a pretty good fight for Charles, at least in my opinion. But we'll see. Yeah, it's possible that Charles's chin is completely gone. But Who knows? We'll see. Here we go. This is something I didn't expect. Mike Tyson will face Floyd Mayweather in an exhibition boxing match in the spring of 2026. What the fuck is going on? Um, all right. I mean, listen, I guess it's good for Mike Tyson. He's going to make a ton of money. But how do you see that last fight if you're Mike Tyson against Jake Paul and say, all right, I want to get back in there again? I know Floyd is not really dangerous and he's also a lot older, but interesting. Interesting. Um, Ilya made Charles look easy in his last fight, but the match is close for Charles. Yeah, yeah. Listen, going into the Topuria fight, that was always going to be the outcome. Charles was a great fighter. His come up was amazing. He was knocking everybody out after getting hurt, whatever. But going into the Topuria fight, stylistically, it was just a terrible fight for Charles. What Charles likes to do, as I said before, he likes to get in close, get in the clinch, get in that close range, and that's where he lands his most damage, and that's where he has his success. But against Topuria was just too slick and too powerful to fight a fight like that. So stylistically, that was always going to happen for Charles. He was always going to get knocked out that way. But in this fight versus Fiziev, as I said, stylistically, I think it's a good fight for him. And yeah, I mean, there's a pretty significant gap between Ilia Topuria and Rafael Fiziev. Not saying Fiziev's a bad fighter because he's not, but there is a big gap between the two guys. So I'm a Charles fan. So I guess I am biased to an extent, but I do think Charles is probably going to get the victory in front of his home crowd. So that'd be cool. That'd be cool for sure. Um, let's see what else we got here. So we really get some weird news. We have Jake Paul versus Tank Davis. Now we have Mike Tyson versus Floyd Mayweather. What the hell's going on? Some weird matchmaking happening in boxing, but whatever. Are you boys going to be watching Canelo Crawford, by the way, next Saturday? I probably will, just because, well, it's a huge fight for one. But for two, the UFC card is probably going to end early, and it's also not a great card anyway. So I'll be watching the card. I'll be watching the UFC card, but I'll also be watching the boxing fight. Is a Mike fight real? Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how this is happening, but yeah, it's real. Multiple sources have reported it. It's going to be an exhibition match, obviously, a significant size difference. And Mike Tyson is, what is he, like 60 or something? So it's an exhibition, but yeah, it's actually happening. I don't know. How many people are like actually going to get excited for a fight like that, especially after seeing Mike fight last? Probably just retire. I mean, I'm assuming he's made a lot of money. So probably he should just retire and, ride off into the sunset. But I guess at the same time, he's making a lot of money to box Floyd, and he decided to keep going. Very interesting. Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy. I would have never expected that. But yeah, they're doing it. Definitely doing it. Like as the last fight, there's also be fiction. Yeah. Yeah. It's just weird. Just weird. Oh man. It's if you like don't if you haven't watched Mike Tyson ever fight or whatever, and you just look back at his resume and you see his last two fights were against Floyd Mayweather and Jake Paul, it's like what the fuck? It's just a very weird end to Mike Tyson's boxing career. But whatever. He's making a ton of money from it, so good for him. And damn. Roofy's so clean on the feet. I was just watching some of his highlights. Roofy's very clean on the feet. Yeah, his card should be good though. I'm excited for it. Definitely excited for it, chat. But yeah, in terms of news, I think that's it. Yeah, more pages are reporting on the Mike Tyson thing. Very weird. But yeah, what could you do? What could you do, chat? Yeah. Let's see. Looking at some betting odds for this upcoming weekend, we have Caio Bahalio as a favorite. I am a little surprised Caio's a favorite. I am picking Caio to win the fight, but from what I've been hearing, most people are on Imavov, and the fact that Caio is still the favorite is a little bit weird to me. But yeah, he's a minus 134 favorite. BSD is a plus 158 underdog. Paul Craig's a big underdog, plus 270. Kid as a minus 220 favorite. Uh, Fakhretdinov and Gustafsson. Fakhretdinov and Gustafsson is probably going to be a really good fight, if I had to say. Very underrated, sneaky sort of good fight. Not because they're like very technical or really good. I actually don't think either one of them are that good, and definitely not that technical. But both of them are just very physical and very aggressive. So it should be a really good fun. It should be a really good fight, fun fight for as long as it lasts. But yeah, that's a sneaky good fight, and it's at the beginning of the prelims. So be sure to tune in to UFC Paris early if you're interested in that fight. Brad Tavares minus 215. Sam Patterson is minus 188 now. He's went up a little bit in odds. Ante is minus 114. Haberas plus 360. Wow. Gomes minus 2. Yeah, so, some definitely good value for this card for UFC Paris. Definitely some good value. But yeah. Yo, what's going on, brother? What's going on? You see chat? Yeah. What, did something not pop up? What's good? What's good, brother? What's good? Welcome back to the stream. Yeah, we just had a couple of weird announcements. Well, first we have Arman Tsarukyan and Dan Hooker, the main event of UFC Qatar, which is going to be cool. It's going to be a good fight. Also, we have Floyd Mayweather versus Mike Tyson coming up. I don't know when it is, but it's coming up for some reason. So that's weird. And we also have Paulo Costa and Shara Bullet for that same card, UFC Qatar. Same card as Arman and Dan Hooker. So should be good. Definitely should be good, boys. Oh, man. Nice another channel again. Oh, that's not you. Never mind. Here we go. Besides you, Bonnie, literally everybody that comments from Kick is trying to sell me something. It's insane. But not interested. Not interested. We good. We good. Let's look at some of these weight classes. Let's do some matchmaking. So for lightweight, let's assume that Arman versus Dan Hooker is official. If that is the official next fight, then we'll have Max Holloway, Justin Gaethje, and Paddy Pimblett as three guys without a fight. So Max says he's not going to fight until next year. Paddy hasn't fought in a while. I don't know if he's willing to wait. And for Justin Gaethje, it seems like he's only going to fight for the title. All right, so this is what I would like to see. I would like to see Arman Tsarukyan versus Dan Hooker, which is seemingly going to happen. Then I would like to see for early next year, Max Holloway against Paddy Pimblett. Why not? And then if Ilia Topuria is legitimately waiting until the spring, I would like to see Arman Tsarukyan, assuming he beats Dan Hooker, against the winner of Max Holloway and Paddy Pimblett for the interim title for 155. I think that would be cool if they do that, and assuming that Topuria is not going to be fighting for a while. Because if he's legitimately not fighting until the spring, they have to do an interim title fight. But yeah. What's going on? What's up? But yeah. So for lightweight, that's probably what I would say would make sense. Coming up next, at flyweight, they're already doing Van versus Pantoja. I'm assuming Van versus Pantoja is going to be on December's card. That's kind of what I'm assuming. It's probably going to be the co-main event. Main event, I could see Volkanovski and Lerone Murphy being the main event title fight for the December pay-per-view card, and the co-main event being Pantoja and Joshua Van. I think that'd be a really good card, and probably would be the card for December. But outside of that, I believe there's already been some rumors about Brandon Moreno and Tatsuro Taira. I think that fight makes all the sense in the world. Manel Kopp is supposed to be fighting Brendan Royval. I think that makes sense as well. So a lot of guys are already taken up, but maybe you can do Almabayev if he doesn't have a fight booked, which I don't believe that he does. You can do Almabayev and KKF. I think that fight makes sense. You could do, or actually, I think it's Almabayev and Alex Perez. Actually, I think that has already been announced. So maybe you could do this. Why not? You could do Charles Johnson versus KKF. Charles Johnson is coming off some pretty good wins over Joshua Van and most recently Loney Kavanaugh. He's number 13 in the ranks. Why not give him a big step up in the rankings, big step up in competition? Give him KKF, who's currently number 6. I think that fight makes a lot of sense. And a lot of guys, as I said, at flyweight already have fights booked around KKF in the rankings anyway. So I think that fight makes sense. For bantamweight, we already have Merab and Corey Sandhagen coming up in October, which should be a pretty solid fight. So that's already set in stone. Umar is already fighting Batista, so that's a pretty solid fight as well, which is already set. Zahabi is already fighting Chito Vera. So you could do Song Yadong versus Sean O'Malley. I think that fight would make sense. The fight that I really want to see, though, is Sean O'Malley versus Corey Sandhagen. I've been wanting to see that fight for a while. And at this point, Corey is fighting for the belt. But if he loses against Merab, I think that fight makes all the sense in the world to do. But yeah, you could definitely do that. But at this point, since Corey does have a fight booked, maybe you'll do Sean O'Malley versus Song Yadong. I think that would make sense. And for Song Yadong, he would be a new blood for the top of the weight class. And for Sean O'Malley, he's kind of in a bad spot at this point, as he is the number 1 contender, but he already lost twice to Merab, so he's not getting another fight against Merab anytime soon. So he's going to have to fight some of these contenders under him. But most likely, Sean O'Malley's just never going to get a title shot again, unless he moves up to featherweight, if he puts on some muscle. But, as long as Merab's champ, Sean's not getting a title shot most likely. So that's kind of what we have for that weight class. Also, I would really like to see Vinicius Oliveira get a big step up in the rankings. I've been talking about Vinicius a lot, but I think he's a really good fighter at the weight class. I think he does a lot of things really well. His cardio is really good. He's very powerful. He's not the most technical guy in the world, but he doesn't really need to be. His chin's really good. Good cardio, as I said. Hits really hard. And he's kind of just one of those guys that cut weight better than everybody else at the weight class, which is a huge advantage for Vinicius. So I think he's going to be good. I would like to see him get a step up in competition here. A lot of these guys, unfortunately, are booked. Honestly, you could do Song Yadong against Vinicius. You could do that fight. But outside of that, a lot of these guys are unfortunately already booked, like Batista, Chito Vera, Figueiredo, Rob Font is booked as well. Zahabi is booked. Cejudo is not, but I don't think you're going to do Vinicius for Cejudo. And Peter Yan's not going to be fighting again before the belt. Umar already has a fight book. Corey already has a fight book. So, yeah. I think you do Song Yadong and Vinicius Oliveira. Why not? Then at featherweight, we already have a lot of title fights for all these weight classes, but we already have Volkanovski set against Lerone Murphy, or essentially set against Lerone Murphy, so they're going to do that fight. We also have Diego Lopez versus John Silva, so that's already set. But other fights I would like to see are Aljamain Sterling versus Movsar Evloev. I really feel like that fight makes a lot of sense. I know they fought before, and Movsar won the fight already, and they didn't even fight that long ago. But I think the fight makes a lot of sense. Everybody else around them is kind of already booked, and I think they're probably the two guys outside of Lerone Murphy who's going to get the next shot, and outside of Gene Silva that would deserve a title shot. If Gene Silva beats Diego Lopez, of course, that would deserve a title shot. So why not make them fight each other again? The first fight was super close and honestly a really fun fight. So I think that makes sense. But if you're not going to do Movsar versus Aljo, you can do Aljo versus Yair, which I think Aljo would probably beat. So that's definitely another fight you could do as well. But yeah, that's definitely some fights you could do there. For what's going on? Sorry, I didn't see this. What's going on? Welcome to the stream. But at lightweight, we kind of already talked about it. At welterweight, I think you do Bilal versus Kamaru Usman. I think that fight makes all the sense in the world. I think you do Shafkat versus um, Shafkat versus Sean Brady. I think that fight makes sense. Um, or actually, I changed my mind. I think you do Michael Morales versus Sean Brady. I think you do that fight, and then you do Shafkat versus Carlos Prates if Prates beats. Actually, I don't know. Honestly, the welterweight division is really good. It's probably the best it's ever been. There's so many legitimate contenders at the weight class. I mean, just going through it, Bilal obviously was a former champion. Sean Brady's a legitimate contender. Shafkat is a legitimate contender. Leon was a former champion. He's definitely a legitimate contender still. Kamaru Usman honestly is as well. Ian Gary is. Michael Morales is. Joaquin Buckley, guys are high on him. I'm personally not, but maybe you can say he's a contender. Carlos Prates is a contender, I think. And there's honestly a lot of unranked guys as well at the welterweight division. So, listen, the welterweight division is as good as it's ever been. Definitely a lot of excitement coming from that weight class, and definitely a lot of good matchups to put together. For sure. How are you? I'm good. I'm good. You're gonna sell me something? But yeah, we're just talking about some matchmaking for the UFC. Of course, we're talking about some of the fight announcements for Arman Tsarukyan and Dan Hooker. Just previewing a little bit this card for UFC Paris, which appears to be a really good one. So definitely this week, this card, as well as the rest of the year, appears to be really, really good. But yeah. Yeah, it's official. Mike Tyson tweeted out about it. That's insane. Mike Tyson versus Floyd Mayweather. It's insane. What kind of world are we living in? We're just getting these weird boxing fights, but honestly, I guess good for them. They're gonna make a ton of money, I'm sure. But from a fan's perspective, I don't know how many fans would be like super interested in a fight like that. I know they are two legends, obviously, but Floyd is probably still has it. But for Mike Tyson, he just looked really bad in his last fight, for being honest. So I don't know. Weird fight, but good for them. They'll make a lot of money. But yeah. But yeah, fellas. Yeah, this one has been a little bit of a slower stream. I get it. We got some NFL football. That's kind of why I hopped on stream a little bit early. But just a couple shout outs. I do want to say that we will be giving out all of our picks, or my picks, I should say, my full card pick list, as well as all my best bets for members. So if you're interested in that, become a member today. And also, we will be doing a full watch along for UFC Paris, which starts at noon Eastern time this Saturday. So if you guys are interested, be sure to join that as well. The card itself looks really good. Definitely a lot of really good fights. So that should be fun. And yeah, we are changing our schedule a little bit. I used to stream on Sundays. I think I'm going to remove my Sunday stream. So at this point, we're just going to be streaming during the week, Mondays through Fridays, 8 p.m. Eastern time. I know I hopped on a little bit earlier for this stream as compared to normal, but for the most part, it will be 8 p.m. Eastern time on weekdays. And if I ever do hop on early like today, I will let you guys know on Twitter. So follow me on there if you guys aren't already. Just give myself a quick shout out here, which is MMA_juicy. I don't tweet that much, but I'm going to get into it a little bit more, talking about some fights live and whatever, and also any sort of updates with my channel. I will be letting you boys know. So a little bit of a shout out there, and yeah. So yeah, it's been a little bit of a quieter day today. If you guys have any questions, be sure to let me know in chat. But yeah, if not, I think I'm going to hop off at this point. Thanks everybody for joining the stream. Thanks everybody for your questions in chat. We will be hopping on a little bit of a live stream tomorrow, just to do a little bit of a preview for UFC Paris, talk about any additional news that came out. And obviously Saturday we will be doing our live stream. So yeah, thanks everybody for joining. I'll see you boys tomorrow. Peace out, boys.